Our scripture reading is from the book of Ruth, from chapter 1, verses 16 through 17. But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There I will be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if indeed death parts me from you." A word of God for a people of God. Thanks be to God. Aren't those words lovely? Aren't they beautiful, beautiful words that remind us of how beautiful our holy scriptures are? The poetry, the songs, the prose contained within our holy word. In fact, it's such a beautiful passage, so affirmative of love's devotion, that we often hear it shared out loud at weddings. Maybe it was even shared at some of your wedding services. After all, it certainly speaks to the commitment we pledge to one another in a marriage. And yet, for being such beloved scripture of brides and grooms, it's interesting to note that this exchange in the Bible, well, it's not between lovers. It's between a woman and her mother-in-law, Ruth and Naomi. It's a promise and it's a love, because lovers don't have the market cornered on love. Love abounds, and there's plenty to go around. There's even enough for our mother-in-laws. I'm kidding, of course. Ruth is the one speaking in this passage, and her promise to accompany Naomi is life-giving for a widow in a culture of dependency. And as we read Ruth's vow to never abandon Naomi, we read her testimony, her truth, that which she needed to say out loud and to a witness. Today in worship, we have an opportunity to hear the testimony of two women, two mothers, who indeed have something that needs to be said out loud and to a witness. It's a privilege to bear witness to one another and seize the way in which the Holy Spirit is moving in the lives of our friends and our neighbors. It affirms, as we say around here in the United Church of Christ, that God is still speaking. Like the woman at the Samaritan well ran back to her town of Sychar to tell of her encounter with Jesus, and just like Mary Magdalene ran from the empty tomb to go tell the disciples about the risen Christ in her midst, I have invited Laura Bauer to run and give us her testimony this morning. I've invited Shannon Givens to run and tell us what needs to be said. May God open our ears to the wisdom we most need to hear. Laura.
Okay, I've definitely been praying for courage. Today I'm going to be talking about faith, strength, and love, and looking for God's sons and blessings. Happy Mother's Day to all those who mother and share their love, their hugs, their strength, and their faith. My name's Laura Bauer. I'm mom to Kate and Joe and Brad, and my nephew Danny is here with me and Kate. Joe and my husband Mark are flying to California at this moment, back to college and work. And Brad was home yesterday because he was asked to throw the first pitch of the Cardinal game. So that was a blessing and a godsend. I had all three of them together. And he's back to Mizzou to study for finals. So when asked to speak today, definitely I had a lot of thoughts swirling in my head, and knowing that I was asked to speak probably because of a tragic day and the journey I've been on the past 2 years with my son, Brad, and our whole family. While thinking and reading through my notes and that I've documented our journey, the main themes that I came across were the faith, strength, and love, and always looking for the godsends and blessings. Faith, believing that God would see us through. Strength, finding the ways to move forward and continue even when you don't want to. Be strong and courageous is a Bible verse that sits on Brad's desk that he got at confirmation. Love, a mother's love, what matters most to me. love of family, friends, church community. It lifts us up and keeps us going. The dictionary defines God sends as an unexpected thing or event that's particularly welcome and timely, as if sent by God. So many blessings, so many God sends, even amongst the tragedy. So this is our story of Brad and I, a mother's love for her son. Brad's senior year, he had just decided to play college water polo. It was March 4th that he was out there, and the coach asked him if he would play. So he was only going to be 15 minutes away from Joe. Things seemed to be looking up. It was a great thing. We went on senior year spring break to Cancun, Mexico, with about 25 other kids and their parents, mostly moms. On Thursday night, late in the night, I had texted him, "Good night, what a fun night." His response was, "Buenos noches, mi mamá." He was happy to be using his Spanish. The next morning was Friday, our last full day there. A few of us moms went on a walk on the beach. As we walked away, Brad was body surfing by himself. I asked the others to stop and watch him since he was alone, because he was the only one that was really a strong enough swimmer to deal with the riptides. It was beautiful. He was so comfortable and at peace in the ocean. And when he finished and came to shore, we continued walking. When we came back, a large number of kids and moms had gathered together on the beach. It was the only time all week that all the kids and parents were together. I'm guessing we had been, which was a godsend, I'm guessing we had been back for about less than 10 minutes as I watched Brad run into the ocean as he had done many times as a child. I can still see it clearly in my mind. He didn't pop up the way he normally did. He looked like a little puppet with his arms and legs not belonging to him, face down, bobbing in the shallow water. I screamed and I knew. It was hard to pull him out. He was heavy, 175 pounds of dead weight. I remember people helping me and surrounding and trying to pull him onto the beach, helping to support his neck. The godsend was that Brad was a swimmer. He had strong lungs, and he knew to take his one breath that he could between waves, and he held it until he was saved. His words were, "Mama, I'm paralyzed, and Mama, I don't want to live like this." Eventually, grabbing my passports back in the room, I yelled at God, "No, no, 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 God, please no." The ambulance ride was awful. No one moved out of the way in the busy streets of Mexico. But B was trying to be positive for me, telling me, "Mama, it's going to be okay." He was trying to be so strong and courageous. At the hospital, a huge godsend was my friend Kim. Husband was a nurse, and she helped me through those first hours navigating the medical world and what the doctors in the States were saying. The neurosurgeon came out about 3 a.m. post-surgery, and I recorded his message. Godsend was, he never used the words paralyzed or wheelchair for life, and for that I am forever grateful. He did say that we had to watch for complications and we shouldn't expect movement for 3 months, which brought me to my knees. My friends had to leave as they were flying home, and it was an awful, long, lonely night waiting to see Brad. I was only allowed to visit him for 1 hour, twice a day, at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. I longed to be with my boy. Nothing else mattered. As a mother, my love was so strong, I wished I could change places with him and take it all away. As you can imagine, I said many prayers during this time alone in the lobby of a small hospital in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language, waiting until 10 a.m. when I could see my baby boy again. These were the hardest days for me, with the language barrier, Brad being unstable, heart rate and blood pressure fluctuating, and the spinal cord which sends all of its messages to tell your body what to do. The not knowing was brutal, and I needed my faith. I was blessed that my sister had flown in to be with me, so Mark could stay home and navigate the insurance and the ambulance. After about 48 hours after the accident, the swelling had increased, and it was affecting his ability to swallow and breathe. This was devastating news for us. He would be put in a medically induced coma so the ventilator could breathe for him. I felt like I was losing him, and no longer would he be able to talk to me, tell me he loved me, or speak and interpret the Spanish that he would do with the nurses and the doctors. The doctors did say he'd be able to fly home sooner since his breathing would be more stable, so I tried to focus on that to be home in the U.S. I know I prayed to God to find the right words and to find the strength to tell Brad that he would be intubated and put in a coma. He was scared. I was scared. He told me to ask for prayers for his left leg. He had faith, believing in the power of prayer. He wanted to tell his family and friends that he loved them. That was so important to him. It's amazing how you can suck it up and be strong for your child and then turn around and lose it as soon as you're out of the room. On my first visit after he was intubated, Dr. Sierra told me that Brad had said, "I am strong." Tears and sadness, yet those words told me that he was in the right state of mind, with an "I am strong" saying becoming a motto for his bracelet, along with "Pray for Brad." Dr. Sierra took the time to show me the machines, and I was so appreciative of her kindness towards me. Kindness from strangers. She knew I loved my baby Nino. Blessed, she was on duty, so blessed. In a few days, I would realize it was a godsend that I had taken pictures of the machines and the settings. Don't know why I did that. The following days in Mexico, which totaled 5, were among the worst for me. Looking back, I try to focus on the godsends, which were plentiful. The times that I know that God was looking out for Brad and me. Being on the beach with him that fateful day. The private hospital that we ended up in, the kind, skillful neurosurgeon whom we still keep in touch with, the kindness of strangers felt but not necessarily spoken, the pictures of the machines that kept Brad alive, that I had to send to an air ambulance company so they could make a medical flight plan since the hospital wouldn't answer the phone or share his records and information since I couldn't pay the whole bill that day. The Spanish prayer card given to me on that scary, scary day we were flying home. I came out of the office crying uncontrollably after being threatened. A stranger placed it in my hands, and I held it praying we would get out safely. It was St. Gabriel, the archangel. I believe she was the one who told Mary she would be a mother. A friend of a friend who dropped everything that day to drive my sister to the airport so we could get home to St. Louis. So many godsends. After arriving in St. Louis, Brad spent 3 weeks at Barnes Hospital in ICU with fever, psychosis, breathing treatments, pneumonia, tracheostomy. It's still difficult for Brad to talk about that time. April 19th, he was transferred to Rankin Jordan Pediatric Bridge Hospital, still trying to breathe and cough. He couldn't scratch his face. He had to be turned over to avoid bed sores because he had been paralyzed, shoulders down. He couldn't eat food or drink water. He had a feeding tube. And yet it was such a pivotal moment. Within hours, Brad, even with the loss of all those things and more, he said to me, "I am blessed to have had a childhood running and playing." Brad was choosing to look at the blessings, and while there, he had to be strong and have the faith that God would see him through. Before arriving at that children's hospital, I had told him that he may be 18, but I still make him lunches. Because you imagine Brad at 6'2", 18 years old in a hospital filled with kids, in a bed a bit too small for him, with this prayer dog, which I forgot to bring today. It would sit between his legs. It was a prayer dog that Michelle gave to him, Michelle Adinger. It sat between his feet, and he said it was collecting the prayers. Kids need to believe. This Mother's Day, this pic is of Mother's Day 2017. It's not how I would have ever imagined, but yet it was a day of love. We were all together, sharing a meal that somebody else made, which was a great example of love thy neighbor. Playing Wii, getting a handwritten note from Brad with his right hand that was just learning to work. Love and focus on the blessings. Enjoy your Mother's Day, even if you have to readjust your expectations and try to focus on the blessings. We truly felt so much love from so many, taking care of Kate, making dinners. It really helped us focus on caring for Brad. So many good people in this world. What a great example of loving thy neighbor. Brad walked out of RJ with a cane 98 days after being paralyzed. Miraculous, a day of celebration. Blessed we could continue to live in the house that we had for 19 years now, since his bedroom's on the 2nd floor. So many ups and downs throughout that first year as he concentrated on rehab and his friends went away to college. So many losses, yet so much to rejoice in. Last August, we celebrated Brad's birthday, my 3 kids together, which you know as a mom is just so nice when you have them together. Before he headed off to college, leaving the nest, which he had waited so long to do that year. As I reflect on the gifts of these past 2 years, a few of them are the bond that Joe, Brad, and Kate share, siblings supporting each other. They've all grown up so much. The I love yous and love you to's, spoken so often now. And I'll joke that my older son, Joe, I might have gotten an I love you once a year on Mother's Day. And now he says it basically every time we talk on the phone. So many examples. And oh, I can't miss this one. Hugs. Oh, so many hugs. Standing up hugs between a boy and his mom. Because I can still remember the first time I got a hug with the help when they pulled him up to stand. So many examples of faith, strength, and love. St. Lucas, this church, the people of this church, so many of you throughout the past 18 years have impacted Brad's faith journey. Brad was raised from age 3 here at St. Lucas. Church school, Bible school, youth group, confirmation, and mission trips. Knowing this was his church home, he was raised to have faith and to believe in God and Jesus, to love one another, to pray for strength, knowing things may not end up the way you'd like, but praying for the strength to persevere, to get to the day when things are better, and to look for godsends even amongst the tragedies and heartbreaks. Our children, all children, need to know faith and strength and love. And St. Lucas has been here for Joe, Brad, and Kate, and all 3 have had to dig deep these past 2 years and rely on what they've learned here in Sunday school, confirmation, and youth group. My hope is we ask ourselves what we can do to help ensure the future generations of children know that faith, strength, and love here at St. Lucas, and to mother and care for all of God's children, always remembering we are all God's children. So happy Mother's Day, and thank you to all those who have been here, who have helped me mother and teach my children. I hope your day is full of blessings and godsends. Thank you.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shannon Givens. I've been a proud member here at St. Lucas for just over 20 years. I want to start by wishing a happy Mother's Day to all of you super moms out there. This is the one day of year that all of our sweat, pain, and tears are recognized. We are, at least we hope to be, put on a pedestal, pampered and doted on by those little ones that gave us our superhero titles. Who knows? Maybe one day Hollywood will finally get it right, and the superhero movie making millions of dollars will focus on the real-life superheroes, moms. I don't know any Marvel or DC character that could even compare to a woman who can serve, protect, and fight off anything that threatens her family. My journey to supermom status, motherhood, and the faith that is essential to go with it started many years ago, long before I could have children of my own. I grew up in a large Catholic family. Being number 5 of 8, yes, 8, I quickly fell into my role as middle child and all the stereotypes that go along with it. Due to my loud and boisterous personality, I was bequeathed the role of family clown, the jokester, if you will. It was a blast having a huge family. There was always someone to play with, always someone to argue with, and of course, always someone to borrow clothes from. I had an amazing childhood, and I would not change a thing. At the center of my childhood was, without a doubt, God, and well, honestly, my mom. Growing up, my mom was way more than just a mom. She was a nurse, a teacher, a friend, an advisor, a warden, a chauffeur, a mediator, and even a WWF referee. These superpowers don't even begin to cover it. She kept our family running like a well-oiled machine. As I got older and realized the extent of her job, I would often think you would seriously have to be crazy to want to be a mom. But as I grew older and wiser, I became more and more amazed by her abilities and superpowers to not only navigate the chaos of everyday life, but to do it with such grace, love, and most of all, faith. Faith and the church was a huge part of my childhood. I went to a Catholic school. My parents were very involved. We went to church every weekend, rain, sleet, or shine. We would pray before every single meal, even very openly and loudly at restaurants. Thank you, Dad. Before bed every night, and during Lent, we would kneel in our living rooms, night after night, saying the rosary. The strong faith and belief in our God and his Son, Jesus Christ, was very prominent in our everyday lives. As a young child, I was oftentimes oblivious to the struggles my parents dealt with. We were able to grow up in this protective bubble where everything was okay, and when it wasn't, we had our faith to carry us through. As hard as they tried, though, they couldn't really protect us from it all. We saw it. We knew when things got tough. And despite their undoubting faith and their dedication to God and the church, they were tested. My dad, who was born with spina bifida, handicapped since birth, never had it easy. He was in constant pain, had multiple surgeries, one leading to paralysis, eventually ended up in a wheelchair, then amputation of both legs, along with countless other medical issues and problems. But even when he had what I can only imagine was the most excruciating pain, I would never hear him cry. Instead, I would hear him praying. His faith was so strong, and he was willing to take on anything thrown at him as long as he knew God was walking by his side. And my mom, well, she had her share as well. Aside from having to be the sole caregiver for my dad for many years as his health deteriorated, she too has dealt with her own health issues, even beating breast cancer twice, all on top of having 8 children to raise, protect, love, and worry about all these years. And she's done it all without any complaints. I've asked my mom many times over the years, how does she do it? How in the world has she been able to deal with all the stuff we as kids have thrown at her and everything with Dad? While she admitted that things would get hard and that she prays a lot, she said when things seem to be at their worst, she just always remembers that God would only give her what she could handle, that God has a plan for everything, and that she knew she would be okay because she's never alone. As an adolescent, I thought this was a little hyped up, a little bit overboard, but soon I would learn mothers do always know best. As I started college and became a young adult, started a career in my independent life, I would say my relationship with God, well, became a little bit of a long-distance one. I still believed. I would still go to church from time to time, but it wasn't a priority. I could count on God when I needed to, but I didn't feel the need to make God the center of my world. Because let's face it, at that age, there's only room enough for yourself at the center of your world. But soon things would change. I had gotten married and was expecting my first child. I found myself desperate to renew my relationship with God. Maybe it was because I was scared, terrified of being responsible for a tiny life, and I knew I needed support, needed that relationship back, needed someone to help guide me through my new journey into motherhood. My husband Scott and I went from church to church trying to find where we belonged, and then we landed here, St. Lucas. Scott had grown up here, was baptized and confirmed here, but had not been back since. He shared his fond memories of St. Lucas with me, and I was more than open into looking at other denominations because the title wasn't important. I wanted to find a church home, a church family, a place for our faith to grow. My relationship with God and the church began to grow and flourish as I became more and more involved here at St. Lucas, participating in Sunday school, VBS, and even church council. I felt closer to God than I think I ever had in my life. I felt humbled by all of the blessings God had given me, my husband, my children, my career, my life. I could not have been happier, and I could not have been more blessed, until the day it was all taken away. 3 days after our third child was born, Scott was diagnosed with cancer. I remember praying a lot, asking God to please give him the strength to fight and to give me the strength needed to care for him and our family. For 5 months, Scott fought with everything he had until he could not fight anymore. Scott had been in the hospital that entire weekend. He had a huge setback Sunday night, and on Monday morning we were told that there was nothing else they could do, that they would keep him as comfortable as they could, and that it was only a matter of time. The hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life happened that day. It wasn't letting Scott go, because in my heart, I knew he would be going to a better place. He would be going home with God, free of pain and suffering. The hardest thing I ever had to do was tell my children their daddy was going to die. At the ages of 9, 6, and just having a baby only 5 months old, I had no idea what I was going to say or how to say it. I knew I could not answer the inevitable questions these young children would ask. Why? Why is this happening? Why would God do this? And why, as their mom, could I not fix it? I had to break my children's hearts that day, which is the complete opposite of what any mother is ever supposed to do. With the help of an amazing counselor from Annie's Hope and Pastor Carol by my side, we talked to them. We attempted to answer their questions as best we could, and we prepared them because it was time to say goodbye. For 24 hours, visitors came and went, offering their love, support, and saying their own goodbyes. I couldn't leave his side. And my mom, she wouldn't and couldn't leave mine. Scott died peacefully the next day. My mom became my shadow. Through the days of the funeral and the weeks, months as we adjusted to our new life, our new normal, back to work, school for the kids, hockey, dance, taking care of a baby, my mom was there for it all. When I was falling apart, she was there to put me back together. When I questioned how I could do this, she reminded me of that mantra that she has lived by all her life. God only gives you what you can handle. God has a plan for everything, and would remind me that I would be okay, that I am never alone. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. My faith was without a doubt tested. I went through all of the stages of grief multiple times in all sorts of different orders. When I was angry at God. Who else was there to blame? When I was bargaining, I was trying to make all sorts of deals with the man upstairs. But through it all, periodically, my mom's mantra would run through my head. God only gives you what you can handle. God has a plan for everything. You will be okay because you are never alone. With the amazing support of my family, our friends, this congregation here at St. Lucas, I would actually start to see it. I would actually start to feel it. I would actually start to believe it. This mantra could not be more true for every single one of us. So when you feel like God has given you too much, that you cannot handle one more thing, remembering that he has a plan and that you are not alone is key. My mom, dad, family, friends, and even all of you, my church family here at St. Louis, all helped to carry that load 10 years ago and every single day since. Being a mom is hard. I would say it's the hardest job there is, and it should not be done alone. We need to not only rely on each other in this unique and amazing sorority of women, but we need to rely on all of those other people around us who are there to help carry the load, because at times it can get really, really heavy. And we need to rely on our faith. It is essential to survival, to know and understand and truly believe that God will only give us what we can handle, that God does have a plan, and that none of us are ever alone. This can be our Supermom slogan. With the superpowers God gives all moms, with our faith and each other, we are unstoppable.
I'm PJ Barbeau. I've been a member of St. Lucas for a little over 10 years now. I loved hearing about Shannon's boisterous family. I didn't have a lot of siblings, but my extended family was huge, 1,000 cousins and all of theirs. And we like to say we're baby people. We love having little kids around. They're the focus of the adults' lives. I've had outside friends go, is that all you guys do is focus on the kids? It's like, yeah, sort of, you know. So a little over 26 years ago, I was coming to the end of a multi-year journey. I was in my 30s, had been divorced in my early 20s, and kind of looked around and thought, I need a family. I want a baby. And so I was in the process of adopting a child. And the process of adopting a baby internationally and as a single woman, it had been filled with highs and lows, certainties and misgivings, obstacles and do-overs. I had unscrupulous people take my money. I had governments change their minds about things. So during that process, I prayed a great deal, fervently, trying to discern if this really was the path that God intended for me. Maybe I wasn't supposed to raise a child. A single woman, a child needs two parents. maybe that was the plan. I wanted to know if I was just listening to the desires of my own heart, or if this was indeed part of what was supposed to happen to me. I recognize now that it was, although it was an anxiety-filled time, it was also a time of great blessing. I struggled and I worried, but the praying was as close as I've ever felt to God in my life, crying out, calling out, what am I supposed to do? Show me, help me. Of course, now I realize that God answered my prayers all the time during that period. He did it in the form of he sent angels to me and surrounded me with angels in the form of loving family members and beautiful friends who were there constantly to say, PJ, yeah, this is for you. It's okay. This is supposed to happen. I have friends who had sent notes and would just assure me over and over again. And looking back on it now, I realized that that was the encouragement and the assurance I need to keep pushing forward in the middle of this. And when Kelly asked me about sharing about being a mother, the exact moment when that happened is indelibly etched on my heart. And I wanted to share with you something that I wrote about that very moment. I was sick of waiting. I had waited for 3 years, and then I had waited for 4 months, and then I had waited 2 days, and now I had waited 2 hours, and I was sick of waiting. All the other parents were holding their babies. They were chatting and cooing and laughing. They were becoming acquainted and becoming knowledgeable and becoming families. And I had been good and patient and polite. I had taken pictures of smiling new families and had videotaped those new families. I had peered through the viewfinder at surprised, wide black eyes and chubby little cheeks that were not connected to me. I had smiled until my own cheeks hurt at the parents who were holding their new babies. But I didn't have a baby, and I was tired of waiting. The sound of my name being called irritated me. I didn't want to take another picture. But that wasn't the case. I was being told to turn around, so look at the doorway, because there she was. I couldn't see much of her. She was dressed like a linebacker in enough padding to hide any evidence of her size and shape. She wore a yellow knit cap pulled down over her eyebrows so that her eyes were the only thing I could really see. But oh, those eyes. Those big, black, beautiful eyes, looking at me with wonder and suspicion, not sure what was going on here. My heart stopped, my breath stopped, and the chattering and the laughing and the noise in the room stopped. All I could see were those eyes. And like some high platform diver, I took the plunge. I began to fall in love. And with each slow step that I took toward her, I just fell further and further. And when I took her in my arms, all plumped up and padded, and my hand brushed the rough little bottom that was actually exposed to the layers of padding, I landed in love. And in that moment, I became a mom. My heart began to beat. I began to breathe again. The connection was made. We were both home. And the waiting was over.